It's movie night, and we're back with a very big Fanboy Film Nerd Galaxy Class spoiler review. As requested, after I did my initial Avengers Infinity War review and a couple Star Wars reviews, I had a couple of people say, well, could you go back and review, as the nerd that I am, in detail, some of the other Marvel films that I like in the series. Now, I haven't ranked them yet, so I'm just throwing these out there, but I'll probably share about 3 to 4, maybe even 5. I don't think we'll get to 10 of these, but who knows? These are just in-depth nerd reviews on my part, talking about the mainly in these reviews, I kind of weave the stories and the characters together. So in this one, we'll get into it. I'm not going to list who plays every single one of these characters in here, because just like Infinity War, these Marvel MCU films have like 560,000 characters in it. And actor-wise, if you've seen a movie in the last 50 years, just take every actor and actress you've ever seen and throw them in this movie, and they'll probably be in this movie, and same in Infinity War. Obviously, that's a joke, but it's just so many people to list off. It would take me 10 minutes to list off everybody who's even in this movie. Marvel, once they went to Disney, I shouldn't say once they went to Disney. Once Disney started producing these Marvel films on this scale, where everything's interconnected and everything is just, they cannot go wrong with one of these films. They obviously have no expense on the amount of money they're willing to spend, not only on the movie, but the characters and who are going to play these characters. And as a nerd who watches film, I love when I go to a theater and know that every one of these characters are going to be portrayed by somebody who has an exceptional amount of acting experience and is going to take these characters serious. One of the knocks back when I was younger in the 80s and 90s is that translation from comic book panels and strips and graphic novels didn't translate all that well to film, because sometimes they would try to get, as film goers, as people who watch these films, as filmmakers, I should say, for the film goers, they tried to make it a little bit too on point. They just didn't have the money and the scope and the scale and the computer graphics and all that stuff just wasn't right for the time. And you can tell, because now with CGI in full effect, and you can pull off characters like Ultron, Hulk, Thanos, Ebony Maw, people like that on screen, right in your face with close-ups, and they look no different than an actual actor, and you can't even tell the difference sometimes. Now, as a studio, when you can produce something that looks exactly like a fucking comic book, we are living in the golden age, and really just the beginning of what they can do with some of these characters. I want to credit another character who is a Marvel character, obviously, but Deadpool. That was one of the first times I literally walked out of the theater and said, you know what? I just looked at a fucking comic book movie. That when I was watching it, it felt like a comic book. I had to remind myself I was watching a movie, because the costume, that was Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds pulled no punches with that costume. Now, I'm going to talk about Deadpool in a future with one of these nerd reviews. I was requested for Deadpool and Deadpool 2 reviews. Once the Deadpool 2 comes out, I'll do that review, but I'll just limit it to saying that one of the things I loved about that movie is that Colossus in that film, in Deadpool, is the Colossus from what I remember growing up reading. That's what he was. That's what it looked like. The accent, the way he looked, they just said, fuck it. This is Colossus. Let's put him on screen. They did the same thing with Cable, as you see in his new movie coming up in Deadpool 2. They are doing a great job of making these characters look and feel like they do from the comics. Now, story-wise, that's a different story, obviously, because with story, you can only do so much thematically and get away with it, where in comic books, just like in television shows, where you have episode after episode after episode to develop characters, you don't have that in a film. You have 2.5 hours to get a lot of characters, a lot of character development, and you just don't have the time. Which is why I think these movies like Infinity War you're not going to see them as much as you think, because you can only have so many movies where everybody's teamed up. A lot of complaints people have had with the last 2 Captain America movies, with Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Civil War in particular. Civil War and Winter Soldier feel like 0.5 Avenger films. When Winter Soldier came out, a lot of people considered that Avengers 1.5. And same with Civil War. That was after Ultron. That was Avengers 2.5. And a lot of people are saying, that's a little much. I like it, but give me a fucking break. You could have called Captain America Civil War Avengers Civil War. There's nobody out there. If you ask, if you're watching this, you're a movie nut job just like I am. You're a nerd just like I am. We're plugged into this stuff. We know about all this stuff. We read all the reports. We make sure we're up to date on all the news and what's going on. But we are the minority in that regard. The majority of the people out there could give a fuck less about the title of a movie or whatever. The general movie-going audience just wants to go in, watch the movie, and they're going to leave. And whatever they see in that movie, they're going to take it and just leave, and they're not going to think anything of it. They're probably not even going to see it again. Now, I'm a nerd. I'll go back and see Infinity War 5 times. I saw The Last Jedi 5 times within 2 or 3 weeks. I saw the Infinity War 3 times in 1 week. So we're minorities in that regard. A lot of people who saw Civil War, most general audience members who saw that, consider that an Avengers film. And why shouldn't they? It is an Avengers film. You have every fucking Avenger available in that film for the most part. And I feel like with that type of a large-scale movie, what's going to be missing from these films, if they keep that up, is character development on a private, lower scale on each individual character. Meaning, if there's another Captain America movie, it just needs to be Captain America without all the rest of the characters. You want to get back to, if Iron Man has a next adventure, it's just Iron Man. Spider-Man, can you get through a movie when Iron Man's not there? It's just a Spider-Man movie. People are going to need that for character development. There's nothing wrong with making cameos, having characters come in here and there. But when even the title of the movie is based on the fact that you're dealing with more of an Avengers-style film and is huge, you kind of take away from the spectacle of something like Infinity War when you just saw Civil War, which I think Civil War is better than Infinity War. I don't think, me personally, I don't like Infinity War better than Civil War, and I don't like Infinity War better than the original Avengers. I still think the original Avengers is the best. And I don't like Infinity War better than Black Panther. I like Black Panther better than Infinity War. So, and really, it's because of the storytelling. And Civil War, I thought, was a culmination of a lot of things building up to it. But that's just kind of setting up so we can get into Ultron and what I feel about this character. So in this movie, one of the things I liked about it was that, yes, it's a continuation of the story or whatever, but it brings in a character. A lot of people, again, even people like me, I was not a huge Ultron fan coming into this movie. He's a good character. I like the potential of him, but he always has seemed like a bridge character to some other plot point. And whenever you have a bridge character like that makes you not really take him that seriously. We knew there was going to be Infinity War, at least 2 more Avenger films after Ultron. So there was no threat that Ultron was ever going to offer up to the Avengers to the point where you felt like any of them were in danger. I felt like in the original Avengers, one of the appeal of that movie was that Loki was wrecking shit all over the place and you didn't know what the hell was going to happen. But because you have all the films in between, once you got to Ultron and you already promised 2 more Avenger films and you promised Iron Man this and that and Captain America this and that and Guardians of the Galaxy, you got all these other movies coming out. I felt like one of the things that drew back the overall concept of Age of Ultron was Ultron himself. I personally hate the name of the movie, Age of Ultron. Age, he was only in the movie for like 2 days, tops, maybe 3, if you count the days. So I don't like when they do that. They could have just called the movie The Avengers Battle of Ultron, or whatever the hell you got to call it, but don't call it an age. I hate that shit. An age is a very long time. So there's no way that anybody thought that Ultron was going to do anything other than be a stopgap to get to Thanos. They had already promised Thanos in the future. And Thanos shows up in the middle at the end of the movie in the end credit scene saying he'll do it himself. They're talking about Infinity Stones. They have references to Thor Ragnarok in this movie. They have references to Civil War starts in this movie with Tony and Cap. So there's so many things that was already promised to other future films that the Age of Ultron, to me, all in itself, it's a fun movie, but it's so many setups to the future movies that I felt like the story itself was very thin. to begin with, the story itself was just trying to get in Vision as much as you could, and to set up the fact that Vision was going to be the bearer of the Mind Stone, which I did like that. I love the fact that the Mind Stone was in Loki's staff, because that obviously, you can control people with the Mind Stone. So I like that aspect of it. I like the fact that they're bringing in the Infinity Stones. You actually get to see 4 of the stones in the film, just straight in your face. They're like, okay, look, there's something going on with these stones. They're powerful. Somebody wants to get them. What the fuck is going on? I like all that. That shit's cool. What I don't like is the villain taking a back seat to all these setups to future films, and then you just have this villain basically stuck in each scene to kind of weave their way into all the different plot lines going into phase 3. So I thought that was a drawback, because I do like Ultron. I like the fact that his personality, and I just watched this movie again to do this review, so it's fresh in my mind. There's a line in Infinity War. Again, spoilers for Infinity War. If you haven't seen Infinity War, by the way, I'm sorry to tell you if I didn't tell you already, spoilers, but I have a spoiler review out for that one. Go watch that one. If I'm spoiling anything for it, you need to go see that movie. This is the problem with having late reviews like Ultron with a new movie out. But again, this is a massive nerd spoiler review. If you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you've seen Infinity War. If you haven't, I'm so sorry. But as I was saying, there's a line in that movie where Bruce is basically saying to Vision, after they're deciding we need to take the Infinity Stone out of his head, the Mind Stone out of his head, to destroy it, and maybe we can keep Vision alive, because there's a lot of Bruce in him. There's a lot of I just lost his name, Tony Stark, and there's a lot of Jarvis in him and Ultron in Vision, because of the fact that he was made up of all those parts together. So if you take the Mind Stone out, there's a lot of that stuff left, and what Bruce says, maybe some of the best stuff is left. That same thing applies to Ultron, because he was made from Bruce and Tony, and you can tell in the performance of James Spader when he's doing Ultron that there are certain quirks that you can see. The way that he talks, he has a smart-ass element to him that comes directly from Tony Stark, but he also has a rage, an unpredictable rage to him that just bursts out of him that clearly comes from Bruce Banner. And I love that. When I did not catch that. I've seen this movie about 10 times probably, and this was the first time I caught, and it made each one of those scenes better when I realized and I caught the fact that he splices in between out having this calmness of Jarvis, but having this smart-ass attitude and banter to him from Tony, and having this just rage that will pop up in him from Bruce. If you go back and watch it, watch all of Ultron scenes and pick up on that. Just watch those little details. It is so good. It made me elevate as a performance. I actually liked his performance better once I started looking at it like that. It was like, oh, okay, so that's how he functions. Because I remember watching all the times previous to that, and I'm like, why would he get all that? But then the line in Infinity War got me understanding what that is. All these characters, these Ultron and Vision, are made up of the people who created him. We are just like people say God created man in his image. It's the same thing with those two, and I love that. That made the movie better to me. So I will say Ultron this time around was the best Ultron I've seen so far from my own eyes, because I love that aspect of it. That was really fucking cool. I love that. And again, I think that's something that I wish they wouldn't have killed him in the movie, because after seeing that, I'm like, that would have been cool if they could have kept him in a couple of more movies, and it would have made the name Age of Ultron be earned. Even though it starts, the Age of Ultron would have started in Age of Ultron, Avengers Part 2, but he would have been in this and that, and maybe they could have killed him off in the beginning of Civil War. I would have loved that. That would have been cool, because in doing so, you wouldn't have to focus on him so much. They could have Thanos Ultron and held him off just a couple of more films and had him pay off in Civil War. That's what I would have done with him. I think, having looked at it now, I'm like, man, that was a wasted opportunity. Because for the movie itself and for all the characters involved, I think Ultron could have been a better movie if it didn't feel so rushed and everything been so set up for other movies that were on the horizon. And the characters themselves, Captain America, Iron Man, all these guys, I've found that Thor has become my favorite MCU character. Spider-Man is still my favorite Marvel character of all time. But in these films, Thor is my favorite. And he was actually my least favorite going into this. Even though I love Thor, his standalone movie, and I actually do like The Dark World quite a bit. Obviously, that's not a tremendously great film, but it's still good. And it goes to say something. If The Dark World had came out and nobody had seen any of these other films, people would think The Dark World is one of the best comic book movies of all time. So that's saying something about how good this Marvel universe is, because The Dark World is considered to a lot of people to be horrible. You go watch that movie. That movie is not horrible at all. If some of these movies were out of the picture, that movie would be considered one of the best comic book movies of all time. It's just contrasted with some of these other ones, again, like Civil War, Avengers. I mean, of course it's not going to be better than those. Are you fucking kidding me? But I would say that a lot of the characters in this movie are done fairly well. I like the performances of some of these characters on Cap's side. Like anybody who is in Winter Soldier, that's in Ultron, I like them better in Winter Soldier, if that makes sense. I like Black Widow better in Winter Soldier. I like Captain America better in Winter Soldier. I like, that kind of deal. Now, I will say this. A lot of people compare these films, this and that. You have different directors. Joss Whedon directed the first two Avenger films, and you have the Russo brothers taking over Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War. So it stands to reason that I don't give a damn if you're under the studio or not. Different directors deal with actors and actresses differently, and you are all human beings. We gravitate towards certain characters. We understand certain characters better. So some of the Joss Whedon ones that I like, when he directed them, I like some of his characterizations. Some of them, like Tony and all of them, you can tell he kind of got them a little better. Well, the Russo brothers deal with Tony a lot different. The Russo brothers deal with the Guardians of the Galaxy and Infinity War a lot different than James Gunn did. So you can tell the differences, but I think all in all, they all still work pretty well together. Again, Age of Ultron, it's hard to get into a deep conversation. You see, I keep talking about other films when I'm talking about this. I'm trying to review this film, and I can't review it properly because it's set up by so many things, but they don't pay off in this film. There's no really big payoff in this film, other than the fact that we get Vision. So I will talk about that. The setup to Vision, I like all that, because it's in the Infinity Stone, and Vision's arc is paid off. Obviously, if you haven't seen Infinity War, his arc is paid off from beginning to end, starting in Age of Ultron to Infinity War. His arc is fucking amazing. The Vision arc. Love that. The only thing I don't like about it is that, again, all the Ultron stuff seemed to have been building up just to get Vision in the story, which I think was completely unnecessary. I think Bruce and Tony could have done what Ultron did to get Vision in that position in the first place, to even have the body and have the Mind Stone ready to go. I think Bruce and Tony could have done the exact same thing without any other outside help from anybody. It would have been cooler if Vision was created just from those two. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem at all that Ultron was involved in doing it. I just wish, if you're going to do it that way, then have more of the conversation, just those two, and weave the story a little better. Get Vision into the story a little bit quicker then, if that's the case. Because he just comes in at the end. And again, how cool would it have been to see Vision come in at the end, and you leave it in a bit of a cliffhanger, and you start pursuing those avenues again in the future films, which you were setting up anyway. Just take care of them then, and just don't rush the ending of this movie. I felt like the third act is rushed. I felt like Ultron would have come up with a much better way of destroying the human race, other than picking up a complete fucking city and then dropping it back down, where he can get inside of any kind of nuclear base, whatever. Why didn't he just go and literally? There's 100 billion different easier ways he could have destroyed the Earth than what he was doing. I don't understand that at all. He wants peace in our time, but he's lifting up a city and killing 100. Just all kinds of innocent people are dying because of the way that Ultron went about trying to take care of killing everybody on this Earth. If he wanted to do, there's so many other ways. He could have transported his energy and all that shit into a satellite in orbit, and all the satellites in orbit, and just started crashing on Earth. That would have taken, that visually would have been amazing. It would have been a lot harder for anybody on Earth, even the Avengers, to stop something like that. He picks one little spot where everybody can come together, and so it's like, okay, so I don't like that at all. No, I don't like that. And that's one of my big problems with the movie. But all in all, I will say this. This is a very good film. I love all the characters in it. There's a lot of good moments in it. Going back to the house with Cliff, seeing his family, that's awesome. I like the The Hulk scene, with the Hulkbuster scene, obviously that's a classic scene. We all know about that stuff like that. So I didn't want to waste time in this nerd review talking about stuff that we nerd out on all the time. All that stuff great. All the action, top notch. Can't say enough about it. It's all good. I just wanted to focus on my biggest issues with the film was that. But I think it ties really good into all the other films. It just seems like a setup film. But I will also say this. This film annoys me less with that than it did before I saw Infinity War and Civil War. Back when this movie first came out, I had a bigger issue with it being kind of a bridge to the other ones. But now the other ones are here, you can go back and just watch the movie and say, okay, it is what it is. But back then, I was like, oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I want a little bit more from this Avengers film. And basically, everybody wanted Infinity War in Ultron back then. You know, at least me as a nerd. So, no, I have no problem with the film. I watched this movie with my son again. We had a blast watching this film. We laughed. There was things going on in it that was great. I love seeing Vision origin again. Love seeing Ultron. It's a great, great film. I don't have a problem with it at all. As much as I used to have a problem with it, haven't seen it again now. It actually was a lot funner to me, and I don't mind it at all now. There's so many things in it that's really good. It's just a little soft and flat compared to some of the other films like Civil War and the original Avengers and Black Panther, Infinity War, and some of the other Ragnarok, things like that. It just doesn't. It has a little bit of a flatness to it, a little bit of a predictability to it, and it's a little bit underwhelming compared to it at the time. It's predecessor of the Avengers. So thought I'd do it for this movie review. I'll see you guys on the next movie night. Take care, nerds.